มาพบกันอีกแล้วใน Channel A Day with Dia วันนี้พี่เอาหนังสือเล่มนี้มาอ่านให้ฟังค่ะ The Flopsy Bunnies by Beatrix Potter. This book is completely adorable. I absolutely love it, so let's get started. It is said that the effect of eating too much lettuce is soporific, but I have never felt sleepy after eating lettuces. But then I am not a rabbit. They certainly have a very soporific effect upon the Flopsy Bunnies. When Benjamin Bunny grew up, he married his cousin Flopsy. They had a large family and they were improvident and cheerful. I do not remember the separate names of the children, but they were generally called the Flopsy Bunnies. As there was not always quite enough to eat, Benjamin used to borrow cabbages from Flopsy's brother, Peter Rabbit, who kept a nursery garden. Sometimes Peter had no cabbages to spare. When this happened, the Flopsy Bunnies went across the field to a rubbish heap in the ditch outside Mr. McGregor's garden. Mr. McGregor's rubbish heap was a mixture. There was a jam pot and paper bags and mountains of chopped grass from the mowing machine, which always tasted oily, and some rotten vegetables, marrows, and old boots or two. One day, oh joy! There were a quantity of overgrown lettuces which had shot into flowers. The Flopsy Bunnies simply stuffed lettuces by degree. One after another, they were overcome with slumber. They lay down on the mown grass. Benjamin was not so much overcome his children. Before going to his sleep, he sufficiently wide awake put a paper bag on top of his head to keep off flies. The Flopsy Bunnies slept delightfully in the warm sun. From the lawn beyond the garden came the distant cackety sound of mowing machine. The blue bottles buzzed out of the wall as a little old mouse picked over the rubbish among the jam pots. I can tell you her name. She was called the Mancina Tittlemouse, a wood mouse with a long tail. She rustled across the paper bag and awakened Benjamin Bunny. The mouse apologized profusely and said that she knew Peter Rabbit. While she and Benjamin were talking, close under the wall, they heard a heavy tread above their heads. And suddenly, Mr. McGregor emptied out a sack full of lawn mowings right upon the top of the sleeping Flopsy Bunnies. Benjamin shrank down under his paper bag. The mouse hid in a jam pot. The little rabbits smiled sweetly in their sleep under the shower of grass. They did not awake because the lettuces had been soporific. They dreamt that their mother, Flopsy, was tucking them in their hay bed. Mr. McGregor looked down after emptying his sack. He saw some funny little brown tips of ears sticking up from the lawn mowings. He stared at them for some time. Presently, a fly settled on one of them, and it moved. Mr. McGregor climbed down on the rubbish heap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little rabbits, said he as he dropped them into the sack. The Flopsy Bunnies dreamt that their mother was turning them over in bed. They stirred a little in their sleep, but they still did not wake up. Mr. McGregor tied up the sack and left it on the wall. He went to put away the mowing machine. While he was gone, Mrs. Flopsy Bunny, who had remained home, came across the field. She looked suspiciously at the sack and wondered where everybody was. Then the mouse came out of her jam pot, and Benjamin took out the paper bag of his head, and they told the doleful tale. Benjamin and Flopsy were in despair. They could not undo the string. But Mrs. Tittlemouse was a resourceful person. She nibbled a hole on the bottom corner of the sack. The little rabbits were pulled out and pinched to wake them up. Their parents stuffed the empty sack with 3 rotten vegetable marrows an old blacking bush, and 2 decayed turnips. Then they all hid under a bush and watched for Mr. McGregor. Mr. McGregor came back and picked up the sack and carried it off. He carried it hanging down, as if it was rather heavy. The Flopsy Bunnies followed in a safe distance. They watched him go into the house, and then they crept up to the window to listen. Mr. McGregor threw down the sack on the stone floor in a way that would have been extremely painful for the little Flopsy Bunnies if they had happened to be inside it. They could hear him drag his chair on the flags and chuckle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little rabbits, said Mr. McGregor. Eh? What's that? Would have been spoiling now, inquired Mrs. McGregor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little fat rabbits, repeated Mr. McGregor, counting on his fingers. 1, 2, 3. Don't you be silly. What you mean, you silly old man? In the sack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, replied Mr. McGregor. The youngest Flopsy Bunny got upon the windowsill. Mrs. McGregor took hold of the sack and felt it. She said she could feel 6, but they must be odd rabbits, because they were so hard and all in different shapes. Not fit to eat, but the skin will do fine to the line of my old cloak. Line your old cloak, shouted Mr. McGregor. I shall sell them and buy myself baccy. Rabbit tobacco. I shall skin them and cut off their heads. Mrs. McGregor united the sack and put her hand inside. When she felt the vegetable, she became very, very angry. She said that Mr. McGregor had done it on purpose. And Mr. McGregor was very angry too. One of the rotten marrows came flying through the kitchen window and hit the youngest Flopsy Bunny. It was rather hurt. Then Benjamin and Flopsy thought it was the time to go home. So Mrs. McGregor did not get his tobacco, and Mrs. McGregor did not get her rabbit skins. But the next Christmas, the Mancina Tittlemouse got a present of enough rabbit wool to make herself a cloak, a hood, and a handsome muff, and a pair of warm mittens. I hope you enjoy me reading this story, because if you do, I really appreciate it, because this is my first series of the Beatrix Potter's book, and so if you want more, you can comment and say what book would you want me to read next of Beatrix Potter. But now I have to go. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like down below. Goodbye!